Welcome to People. I'm your host, Gaynor Hall. Let's get started. Sending kids to college is one of the things that makes parents most proud, but it's also making some parents poor. Our first guest says setting some guidelines when planning for the future will benefit not just parents, but help secure a better future for graduates as well. Ce Cole Dillon is the author of What You Don't Know About Student Loans Can Hurt You. Welcome to the show, Ce. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Gaynor.
It's such an important topic because obviously we want our young people to go to college, but we don't want them to be saddled with debt afterwards.
That's right. And a little planning goes a long way. So we tend to think of college as being something where affordability does not matter, but it really does matter, especially if you're borrowing the money to go to college. If you borrow more than $60,000 to go to college, you're put on a 30-year repayment plan. That's the same length as a mortgage.
So that means you're not paying off your loans until you're almost ready to retire.
That's right. So, you want to think about how much you're going to borrow. And generally, the rule of thumb is that you should not borrow more than you're going to earn in your first year of working. So you need to think about what your options are, and there are good options out there. For one thing, there's a college at every price point. So a lot of times we let our children build their dreams about their dream college without regard to what it's going to cost, without regard to what it is that they want to do for a living. And what we need to do is to readjust those when they get older and to make sure that if what they want to do for a living is something that's not going to earn a lot of money, do you really want to incur the debt if that's the way you're going to have to finance your college education and finance that debt over the rest of your working life?
What about the planning long term if you plan to do some graduate studies, if you're going to law school or you want to become a doctor? So that's even more money you're going to have to spend down the road.
And that's something to think about. It's estimated that the average college graduate earns about $1 million more than a non-college graduate. So think about that in terms of how much money you're going to spend on education. If you spend $250,000, which is what a Tier 1 private university education will cost you, 4 years at about $60,000 a year, and then you spend another $200,000 on a graduate education, you've now spent $500,000 of your $1 million difference in terms of education. And then you got to start to ask, was it really worth it, to spend that kind of money for just a $500,000 difference?
You make a great comparison of selecting a college to choosing a new car, right?
That's right. So, when you're going to buy a car, based on how much money you have, what kind of car you can afford. So if you have Chevy money, you go to the Chevy dealership. But what you don't do is go to the Mercedes dealership when you have Chevy money. And schools are really priced somewhat like cars in the sense that every college publishes a sticker price, but no two students pay the same price for college. What you pay is a function of the plan that you get offered by the college. So if you and I were going to the same school, studying the same major, entered on the same day, going to graduate on the same day, you would have no way of knowing what I was paying for tuition, nor would I have any way of knowing what you paid for tuition.
Bigger picture, though, we haven't hit a ceiling in terms of how high higher education costs can go.
Well, that's right. Right now, the most expensive colleges cost about $60,000 or $65,000 a year.
And that seems like that has grown just in the last few years since I've been out of school.
Since 1999, tuition has grown 500%. It's the fastest growing thing in the economy. So faster than healthcare. And we know that healthcare is a crisis, but we haven't quite gotten to the same place when it comes to the growth of tuition. We are starting to look at the outstanding student loan debt. Right now it's estimated that about $1.3 trillion is outstanding, and that's over about 40 million borrowers. So that basically means that about 1 in 5 adults has student loan debt.
Okay, so let's talk about some tips that we can give parents of kids who are heading into college or maybe heading into their senior year of high school. What do you do now?
So one of the things that you want to do is to Google something called a net price calculator. And what the net price calculator does is it lets you factor in whatever aid you're going to get whatever the tuition at that particular university cost, so that you can actually compare apples to apples in terms of whatever aid options you're given for students. You want to make sure that you file your FAFSA as early in the year as you possibly can. They're allowed to be filed on January 1. If it's January,
drag your feet.
That's
Don't
right.
procrastinate on that FAFSA.
That's right. If it's January 15th and you don't have yours filed, you're late. So get it filed as early as possible, because certain aid is limited. And if the aid runs out before you get your application in, then there won't be any money for you. So you want to get as much money that is available for you as possible. File your FAFSA early. But the next thing is, parents need to understand that if the school is accredited, it's accredited to a standard. So some schools have better marketing than other schools, but you want to make sure that your child is going to an accredited school, and if it's accredited, that they do as well in that accredited school as they can. That's what's really important, not whether or not the school has a great name brand.
And how about those merit-based scholarships as well?
Oh yeah, that's absolutely right. So, you can get
You
scholarships.
gotta take advantage of all of the money available.
That's exactly right. And people don't think about their affiliations. Unions offer scholarships. So if you're a union member, you should be looking to your union to see if they have a scholarship for your child. But if you don't know where to start, there's a great resource called MyScholly.com. It's MyScholly.com. You can create a free account and you can go in and search for options on finding scholarships that fit for you. And a lot of people say, well, I don't know where to start. Start with your immutable traits. If you're a woman, search for scholarships for women, or if you're a guy, search for scholarships for men. If you're left-handed, search for scholarships for left-handed people. If you're from Illinois, search for scholarships from people from Illinois. My mother was a glass bottle worker. If you got somebody who was in that union, search for
those resources.
Use those resources.
And so maybe not looking at schools across the country, but staying closer to home, taking advantage of the public state schools.
State schools typically cost less, but you do have to do your homework. Sometimes in the contiguous states, they offer in-state tuition. For instance, at Chicago State, will offer in-state tuition for students from Wisconsin, Iowa, Missouri. So, it's possible that you can go out of state and get in-state tuition, but you want to be looking for that as an option.
All right, C, thanks so much for joining us. You can find more information or contact C at her website, schoolloan411.com.